America is not a racist country.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a Black history lesson on a man that was wealthy during his time named Thomas Jeremiah. He was lynched, like many Black business owners in America. If they were wealthy and they were doing just fine for themselves, they happen to run into a problem, be accused of something, and that's all it took. You just accuse a Black man of something, and he could be lynched, and he was. This happened countless times to many Black business owners. And look, they still try to sabotage you in business even to this very day. Go look at the story of famous Amos and what they did to him. See, anytime you got something good going, and they see that you're doing well, they try to sabotage it. Y'all remember the man that made a machine that turned air into water, and they kept sabotaging his machine because, see, they weren't smart enough to come up with something like that. So they're going to do everything they can to mess it up for a Black man. Y'all remember that story. And the amazing thing is that man comes out of the same town that my mother grew up in, Fitzgerald, Georgia. So let's get to this story. It's the same that you have heard many times before. You know, whenever a Black man could do extremely well selling to his own people, working within his own community, these white mobs would come along and lynch him, torch the building, steal the bank account, steal whatever property and land this man had, and that's how it was done. You know, all you got to do is make some false accusation, and that's part of the rigging. You believe anything that comes from them, and anything that comes from us, nah, you can't trust or believe that. I mean, like, these people got some serious nerve, for real. So I'm going to go ahead and play this audio, ladies and gentlemen. And this is from WESM 913.
University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Today, I amplify for us the mostly silent voice of Thomas Jeremiah. Thomas Jeremiah left us very few of his own words to read. As my father in law did, Thomas Jeremiah let his actions speak for him. I think often of Thomas Jeremiah when faced with another day of news of government sanctioned violence and court approved vigilantism in the United States. Thomas Jeremiah lived his life and met his unspeakably horrifying death in South Carolina before even the founding of the United States. South Carolina proves itself time and again to be the national capital of racialized and racist violence. I tell my college students that American history is too horrifying to teach to children. This is why we teach myths and tales instead of history. The story I will tell you today is a horrifying story from our horrifying history. In the 1700s, British men in the colonies on the east coast of North America debated independence and revolution, asserting their rights as Englishmen and their freedoms as white men. This debate was by no means a slam dunk. These men were in conflict with each other and even held conflicting principles in their own minds, as this story will show you. A white guy named Henry Laurens was one of the wealthiest men in Charleston in the colony of South Carolina. Laurens built his fortune in the industrial trafficking of humans. He owned large slave labor camps in South Carolina, and he enslaved hundreds of people. He was hugely respected for his integrity, and he was elected president of the Continental Congress in 1777. Then there was a black man named Thomas Jeremiah. He was one of about 500 free black people in Charleston, and he was perhaps the wealthiest black man in North America. He made a fortune in the fishing industry. He was a respected and highly skilled harbor pilot, and he was also an enslaver of human beings. According to some fine historians, Thomas Jeremiah's wealth was probably his doom. In the confusion and panic of colonists and imperialists shooting at each other in South Carolina in 1775, rumors and fears spread. Many colonizing British began to panic over the rumor that the Imperial British were organizing armed allies among the enslaved people in South Carolina. Rumors led a panicking Henry Lawrence to focus on Thomas Jeremiah. Thomas Jeremiah was marked, scapegoated, damned, and murdered. No one followed the very due process of law that they were fighting the imperialist British for. Thomas Jeremiah never had a serious chance to defend himself. A free man, Jeremiah was nonetheless tried under the Negro Act of 1740, a law written to protect white people and convict black people, a law that assumed that all black people were enslaved. Free, Thomas Jeremiah went to slave jail and faced slave punishment. Henry Lawrence led the conviction and condemnation of Thomas Jeremiah, his financial rival. Lawrence called Jeremiah, quote, a forward fellow, puffed up by prosperity, ruined by luxury and debauchery, and grown to amazing pitch of vanity and ambition. Lawrence demanded that, quote, nothing less than death should be the sentence. On August 18, 1775, Thomas Jeremiah was hanged on a scaffold in front of the workhouse on Magazine Street in Charleston. His body was immediately taken down and burned to ashes on the site. The British Royal Governor of South Carolina, William Campbell, an enslaver himself, was shocked at the harsh and hasty injustice meted out to a free man. Campbell described the event as judicial murder, and he described the executioners as barbarians. Campbell's attempt to intervene on behalf of Thomas Jeremiah led a mob to run him back to England. When he fled, British rule ended in South Carolina. Thomas Jeremiah had worked as a harbor pilot, navigating ships through the treacherous sandbars at the entrance of Charleston Harbor. This was a really important and highly skilled profession. In addition to his work as a harbor pilot, Jeremiah worked as a firefighter, and he ran the fish market in Charleston's Wharf District. Eventually, Jeremiah became an enslaver himself and a man of great wealth, possibly the richest person of African descent in North America. Earning the respect of his own community, as well as the respect of a number of prominent white allies, Thomas Jeremiah seems to have transcended the accepted color line that was becoming ever more sharp during the course of his lifetime. Yet the same skills which initially brought him success and notoriety would ultimately make him a target for suspicion. His connections to rich white South Carolinians helped him during a racist legal entanglement he had in 1771. On July 17, 1771, Thomas Jeremiah was convicted of assaulting a white ship captain and was sentenced to an hour in the pillory and 10 lashes with a whip. In view of his status, however, the British governor pardoned Thomas Jeremiah. However, in 1775, Jeremiah again caught the attention of the white power structure of South Carolina and was suspected of involvement in this alleged plot by the British to use enslaved people against white colonists who were opposed to British rule. Given Thomas Jeremiah's position and his work as a harbor pilot, white colonists feared that he was a leader of this rumored insurrection. He became the foremost suspect in this alleged plot by the British to use the majority of the Carolina populace, enslaved people, against the rebels. As a man who had long worked with battleships and with fire, Thomas Jeremiah was rumored to be, and convicted of being, a dangerous link between black South Carolinians and the ruling British. Henry Lawrence denied that free Thomas Jeremiah should be accorded the rights of a free man and tried by a jury. English law was designed for white people. As an African, Lawrence argued, Jeremiah had no claim to the benefits of English law. The only option was to try him as an enslaved person. Under the Negro Act of 1740, the accused were tried in special slave courts, which denied the accused the judicial rights of the regular courts. There was no jury, only a tribunal of 5 white men who functioned as prosecution, judge, and jury. In contrast to traditional English courts, the defendant was considered guilty until proven innocent in the slave courts. The accused in the slave courts had no defense counsel. The accused in the slave courts was doomed to conviction. The evidence against Thomas Jeremiah consisted of the testimony of two enslaved people, probably extracted under threat. One of them was Jeremiah's own brother-in-law, who retracted his testimony before the Episcopal Bishop of South Carolina. The slave court, not surprisingly, found Jeremiah guilty and sentenced him to death by hanging and burning. As an act of humanity, the slave court allowed that he could be hanged until death before being burned. On August 18, 1775, Thomas Jeremiah was brought to the place of execution, a green space across from what was called the Sugar House of Charleston, which was the place of violent correction for defiant and uncontrollable enslaved people. At 12 o'clock noon, Thomas Jeremiah was brought to the gallows. Before the noose could be tightened around his neck, he proclaimed his innocence, and he told his accusers that, quote, God's judgment would one day overtake them for shedding his innocent blood. Those are the only words of Thomas Jeremiah that we currently have in our historical record. In front of the large crowd of white and black people, Thomas Jeremiah was hanged. After he was asphyxiated, his remains were set on fire as both a reminder and a warning. A contemporary of his stated, quote, surely there is no murder so cruel and dangerous as that committed under the appearance of law and justice. Thomas Jeremiah seems an unlikely person to have led a rebellion by enslaved people. Jeremiah was an enslaver of several people himself. His rise to wealth and prominence may have been a living reproach to the white elite's claims that African people were fit for nothing but slave labor. Jeremiah's work as a ship pilot also worked against him. Fearful white people argued that no one knew the harbor as well as he did, and they worried that he would guide British Navy vessels into the Charleston harbor. Thomas Jeremiah had also served the city of Charleston as a volunteer fireman, but even that hurt his cause. People fear-mongered that he knew so much about putting out fires that he was likely setting them. One of his accusers, and a member of the tribunal that convicted Jeremiah, was the city's fire master. Within a year of his death, 4 enslavers from Charleston signed the Declaration of Independence, affirming that all men are created equal. But the lynching of Thomas Jeremiah shows that these founding fathers intended that the America being born would be a white man's country. To read about this man's life and his place in our history, I recommend a great book called The Hanging of Thomas Jeremiah, A Free Black Man's Encounter with Liberty. The author of this fine history is J. William Harris. I'm Catherine Barrett.
Okay, so you heard that. So they persecuted an innocent man. Don't they do that to this very day? They are their ancestors. How many times do we see exonerations? Okay. Or, every now I heard they're trying to get a pardon for Marcus Garvey from Joe Biden. I mean, this is just ridiculous. Some things never change. And if you are a black man in America, you are not safe, whether you are committing crimes or not committing crimes at all, because there's still a great chance, even though you are innocent, you will still end up behind bars because they got it rigged up for the system to be that way. When they put these prisons up right after slaves left the plantation, the intention was to keep a stream of black men going in there to do all kinds of labor, another way of kind of boxing you in to serving slavery. So that's what mass incarceration is for. And then we know about sharecropping and reconstruction and all of that. They always try to find loopholes in the law to keep you in a subservient state. And ladies and gentlemen, they're still doing it to this very day. when they keep a black man that's innocent behind bars for decades. That's a bunch of work you done got out of them. They don't care. They have never taken a big care about jailing innocent people. But see, many of them are now landing in these hellhole jails that they were the ones that created. And their people ain't holding up so well behind bars. They're mentally falling apart. But I guess you would if you were born and raised and taught that only one kind of person goes in there and not you. Oh, well, I guess when you don't prepare your people, then they are going to suffer like that behind bars. But you know what? That's your problem. That's your problem. But y'all, please tell me what you think about this piece of history. It sure sounds like many things that are done to this very day. History just never stopped repeating itself in this society. If it happened in the past, it will be sure to happen to this very day. So, y'all, I'm not in their public school. And hey, if these are my people, I have every right to talk about them. But, y'all, please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.